Well, we just heard two Bible stories today with people who were angry and unhappy. Jonah is so angry and frustrated with what God called him to do and with God that he keeps telling God, I'm so angry I want to die. The vineyard workers that worked all day were upset and unhappy with the landowner because they thought they should have been paid more than the workers who only worked part of the day. Both stories are about people who see God's grace, that is, God's generous love and mercy, as unfair. There's a clear difference in what God's actions declare as fair and what the world leads us to see as unfair. Looking at the details of these stories of Jonah and the vineyard workers reveals we all have a choice between one, feeling that self-centered anger, and two, feeling the thankfulness and joy at the generosity of God's grace. Remember, God chose Jonah to go to the big city of Nineveh and deliver a message that God was going to destroy them all. And if you recall, Nineveh was part of Assyria, which is Israel's feared and hated enemy. Jonah tries to run away, and you all likely know what happens next to Jonah, right? He's on a boat in a storm, and then what happens? Big fish comes and swallows him, and he's in there for 3 days, and then the fish spits him out on the shore. After which Jonah goes into the city. We hear just a little way, a third of the way into the city, gives a short sermon. Here's his whole sermon. 40 days more and Nineveh will be overthrown. And then he leaves the city. That's it. One time, short, sweet. Word spreads, and the people of Nineveh immediately humble themselves before God. Even the animals join the fast. And then we pick up with today's reading. God changes his mind and decides to spare all the lives in the city. And instead of being happy with the people of Nineveh, that they actually listened to him and his half-hearted, bare minimum warning, Jonah is angry. Maybe Jonah was hoping that no one would listen to him and he would get to see God destroy the people's enemy. Instead of feeling thankful and joyful at God's amazing grace, Jonah gets angry that God is merciful and loving. Jonah gets so angry and bitter that he goes off to mope and maybe hope that God will change his mind again and still punish those people somehow. Then God gives Jonah another lesson using a bush and a worm. And Jonah gets mad at that a bush, which gave him shade, is attacked and dies. God asks, if Jonah can get so passionate about a bush that lives just a bare 24 hours, why can't God be passionate about 120,000 plus people and all their animals? So if you were in Jonah's sandals, how might have you responded to God's actions? Would have you been angry that God decided to show mercy to your people's enemies? Or could you have chosen to feel joy and thanksgiving because you witnessed that God is truly merciful to all people? There is a choice. Feeling anger that God is merciful to your enemies, or feeling joy and thanksgiving that God is so extremely merciful and loving? Is it fair that God spares people different than us? Is it fair that God saves people that do harm to others? Yes. We can be glad that God saves even those who harm others. Why? Because we fall into that category too. Jesus' parable of the workers in the vineyard also teaches us about God's understanding of unfairness and fairness. I wonder if the workers who begin picking grapes at dawn would have felt differently if they had been paid first the full wage that the owner promised them. Would they have seen the owner paying those who worked less time the same wage they had received with such jealousy? Or could maybe they have more easily seen the generosity of the landowner? A day's wage was just enough to live on and feed and house a family. Just enough. What if the next day they were the last to be hired? As Jesus tells the story, though, the ones who were hired last are paid first, even though they didn't work the full day. They're paid a full day's wage. The workers hired first see the owner is very generous as they wait to be paid. Expectations build. The generous owner will certainly pay them more now, because look, he's so generous. Look at what those lazy latecomers got. Surely we, the hard-working, devoted servants of God, will get more than they did. They begin to compare themselves to the other workers. And when the landlord doesn't measure up to their expectations, the expectations they had built on their own jealous comparisons, they get angry and grumble. So now we come to thinking about what is fair in our world today. What is fair when it comes to God's love and salvation? The fairness of justice and the fairness of God's salvation are distinct, but they're still related. First, let's consider fairness related to justice. We sure do struggle and debate what's fair in our world today when it comes to justice. What is fair when it comes to punishment for certain crimes? What is fair daily wage, or for us, hourly wage? What would God have us to say and do about the issues of fairness in our world today? $15 an hour wage? Help rehabilitate drug dealers instead of punishing them? The Bible is clear about God's will for us, and it is to take care of the widows and orphans, to feed, give water, and clothe those in need, to love our neighbor as ourselves. And as we learned last week, we are to forgive as God forgives. What's God's will? God's will is always about generosity and mercy. But we humans, we all like to compare ourselves to others. And social media sure has made that easier, hasn't it? Jealousy enters our heart, and from jealousy builds anger. Instead, can we choose to be happy with God's generosity to us? Certainly there is theft, poverty, and unfairness in the world. There are many who do not care for widows and orphans or the needy. But God has revealed His will. Bless some of us with resources to help others. Given each one of us a voice and enough love and mercy to share and speak out. You have a choice. Compare yourselves with others and get angry and jealous. Or remember how God has blessed you, has been merciful to you, loves you. To look around and celebrate God's love and generosity to the world. To desire to seek what the Bible teaches about justice. And to feel joy wherever and whenever God's mercy and love are revealed in the world. So that's about justice. But what about salvation? What is fair when it comes to God's love and salvation? Does God really so love the world that He sent His Son not to condemn the world, but to save it? As we hear from John 3:17. It is truly joyful news. Every single person has the chance at new life and to know God's love. The more God's love takes hold in your heart and in your life, the more hope you will have. The more you're able to see that love and have it enter you, the more able you will to be able to make a difference in someone's life who's struggling, and the more joy you will feel. Jonah and the vineyard workers who worked all day had a choice. They could have chosen to be thankful for the generosity they received, choose joy. They could have chosen to celebrate God showed mercy and generosity to others, to choose joy. God gives you grace, mercy, love each morning. May you see God's love and mercy given to you and celebrate with joy wherever God's grace is revealed in the world. Amen.